Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. This is a class on Rav Kook, Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook's teachings. We're using this sefer called Yesh, Lecha, Kanfe, Ruach. Al imun hadam be'atzmo u'bechayav, believing in yourself and in your life. And it is Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. Yud Daled Hashvan Hatavshin Pei Gimel. I'm Riva Muna. This is the second class in the Tuesday learning, just so people know as far as the recordings. Okay, so we are in Seif Hey. So it says like this. Chesron Emunah b'yisod hatov mevi'ah morech halev. So Rav Kook says, when we're lacking in a foundational emunah of the underlying goodness of Hashem and Hashem's underlying good intentions for us, then we feel bitterness in our heart. So again, now all of this is being offered itself from goodness and love, not from any place of judgment and another reason to feel heavy and not good with ourselves, right? But he's inviting us into, we use this word, oh, emunah this, emunah that, blah, blah, right? So he's refining for us on a very foundational level the word emunah. And it's interesting that Moshe Rabbeinu is called, right, the Raya Mehemna, right, or the O'en Eman, from the word emunah, right, because a quality of emunah is, and it's interesting because in the body, Moshe Rabbeinu is connected to the endocrine system and to nursing, to milk, right? It's likened to the way that he taught us Torah was he nursed us. He nursed our mochin. So the first thing that a baby gets is not just the actual milk, but they get their emunah from their mommy, that they know that the foundational experience is when I have a lack, someone cares. And when I have a lack, there'll be a response. And not just physical, but spiritual. I won't just get milk, but I'll also be held and soothed and loved. And that's what Moshe was nursing us in. The whole experience of man, remember it says man, which comes from, again, emunah, same word, right, man, is to nurse us, not just in the physical, but on such a deep spiritual way that Hashem loves me, that underlying it is a force of good who cares about my good and always has my best interests at heart. If I don't feel or believe that, that's fine. That means I need to regress and go back to mochin to katnut and have a redo, right? I can have a do-over. Like in psychology, babies will regress because they didn't get what they needed at a certain stage. And so they know they're actually smart enough to go backwards, to regress, because they need something that they didn't get at that stage, right? So if we didn't get this in our bones, right? This is not a sechel. It's not wired through the rational mind. It has to be more, the baby doesn't think about, well, let me see. The last 2 times I cried, this lady came and gave me milk. So statistically speaking, there's an 0.763 chance that, right? No, the baby's just like, I know this thing in my body. Bibsari, okay, right? I know. Because how do I know? Because it's starting to be programmed into me that I'm cold, I cry, I'm wet, I'm hungry, right? And there's some force that cares, right? And the more mochin, the more we're going to be required to be patient in the response from the good force to show up. right? When a baby is a day old and they cry, we pick them up that second. When a baby is 6 months old, we might say, let's see if they can fall asleep after 5 minutes, because maybe they're just tired and maybe they just need a rest, right? Or when a toddler is learning how to walk, we let them fall, obviously in safe conditions, right? Because we're growing mochin. And the more mochin that we grow, ironically, the more Hashem lets us try things seemingly on our own so that we can grow our own strength, right? Our own bechira. It's again an act of trust and an act of love. But if we're not wired in Shlav Aleph, right? Shlav Gimel, Shlav Yud Gimel, Shlav Tet Zayin are always going to feel difficult and too hard, because we need to be able to nurse from literally the original nursing experience. Life is good. I'm safe. There's a force in the world that wants me here, that cares about me, and that has always my highest, best good and best interests at heart. Okay, so Rav Kook says, if I don't have this, then I begin to feel a bitterness in my heart, which is understandable. A baby, they know this even scientifically, right? The saddest thing about a baby who is neglected is after a while, they stop crying. They won't even cry anymore because they realize it's not worth it. No one's coming. Right? Okay. וזה המורך גורם שאי אפשר לאדם לעמוד במערכה הרוחנית של החפצים הנשגבים. This is what we just said about the baby, right? He says, but now on a spiritual level, he says, if I'm missing the underlying programming that the force that created the world and created me and sustains me is good and wants my good, then it causes this bitterness. And he says, and then the bitterness blocks me from wanting spiritual connection. Right? He says, just like the baby is like, forget it, man. There's no point in crying because no one cares. He says, if I'm missing this piece, then I'm also get shut down in seeking spiritual connection because I don't think anybody cares or is going to come. Right? And it hurts too much. חושש הוא שמה איננו ראוי להתשוקות הרוממות שהנשמה כל כך מתאווה אליהן. He says, and that the person begins to feel unworthy. Who am I to have these deep yearnings and longings and visions of what my neshama is and wants to do here and wants to contribute and wants to do for Hashem, right? And a person won't allow them in, right? Because again, from a place of, who am I? ומתוך כך הולך הוא ונופל. מתנבנה ומתדלדל. Just ironically, that's actually the place that leads us to fall. We want so much holiness, but we think like, who am I to want all of this holiness, right? It's ridiculous. I know what I am and I know who I am. And it's from that place that we fall, he says. And mitzaldel from the word dalil, dal to be low, dali to be a bucket, right? But ledaldel is to get watered down. Right? You had all this fire, right? And it's like, whatever. Right? And just וזהו כל היסוד של הנפילה אשר לאדם, שהביאה אותו לידי המהומה והמגערת, העלבון והמוות mas tema ushvichut damim rabim. Chason emunah be'or hatov ha'me'ir b'kirbo. Rav Kook says, the truth is this is the reason why any human being makes the choices that they make, because they don't think that they're worthy of light, and they don't believe in the light that's inside of them. To read it again. V'ha'elbon v'hamastima ushvichut damim rabim. And it's so crazy. Sorry, it's strong lashon, but he said it's from that place that human beings can even reach murder. But right, but he's saying there's a polarity. The more holiness and greatness we want, and we don't think it's possible, right? And then a person's like, forget it, whatever. What's the point? All of that energy goes the other way, right? So it's he has these little notes on the bottom. So we'll start from the beginning. חסרון אמונה ביסוד הטוב. כשאדם איננו מאמין מספיק ביסוד הטוב והמאיר שבו. Now Rav Kook sharpens it even more, and he says, yes, okay, we need an underlying belief. Step one is we need an underlying belief in the overall goodness of the world, of Hashem, of creation, right? There is a force out there that's good, because that's, how do we know that? Because that's what a baby needs. A baby doesn't believe in themselves. There's no self. There's no, right? It's the baby starting to experience, this world is pleasurable. It's safe. It's okay, right? Says, but the next shlav is when the baby, is like maybe like a toddler, maybe, right? That I have that goodness inside of me, right? I'm what? Ne'eman. I'm reliable. I'm that. The same way I need Hashem to be that force of Tov that's reliable and consistent and stable and has good intentions. That same force exists inside of me. I am that for someone else, right? Also for myself. It's again going back to what we're saying about betraying ourselves, right? Then I start to doubt, well, maybe I'm not that nice, benevolent force because I'm not even being nice to myself, right? Okay, so he says, if it's hard for me to believe that I have this light inside of me, gorem lo hadavar lemorech lev, it leads to bitterness of the heart. Hulsha, weakness, upachad, and fear. Morech lev ze einenu me'afsher la'adam la'amol בסדרי ההתנהלות ובהתמודדויות של העניינים הרוחניים הנשגבים. He says when someone feels this bitterness in their heart, then they feel weakness and they feel afraid and they feel scared. And then the way that it plays out is that a person is not able to function, right? And manage all the things that one needs to do in order to grow spiritually, right? So it's like a cycle. They don't believe there's light in them. That belief causes weakness. It causes bitterness. It causes fear. And then that weakens us from being able to step in and take the actions that might actually give us the experience that we have light inside of us and that Hashem is light, and right, and it feeds itself. מפני שהוא חושש שאיננו ראוי להגשים את התשוקות העליונות שנשמתו כל כך מתאווה עליהן. Right? And he says, Rav Kook says, there's a crazy thing that there are some souls that are so hungry for God and so hungry for light and for goodness in the world, that they feel so unworthy And then that feeling of unworthiness pushes them away, right? And then it feeds the fact that then they start to feel like it's not possible, right? And he says, but inside, those are actually the souls that are yearning the most, right, for light and for goodness. וזהו כל היסוד של הנפילה של האדם, כל כישלונות האנושות וייסורי הבאים מחיסרון אמון באור הטוב שמאיר באדם. So understand what's the chidush that Rav Kook is saying? He's saying it's one shlav that we need to believe that Hashem is Tov and Or, and that's the underlying principle, right? He says, and the Rav of Koenig, the Tzadik Libracha, he used to say this to me, and he told me that Rabbi Nachman used to say it to Rav Nassan, right? He would say, Nassan, I know you believe in Hashem. He would say it in Yiddish, but I can't say it in Yiddish. I know you believe in Hashem, Nassan, but it's not enough that you believe in Hashem. You have to believe in yourself, right? So he says here, right, this bitterness and this darkness, and he's very specific. He says, comes from not believing that light is inside of me. Whatever reasons I've decided, right? I'm too bad, I'm too broken, I'm not worthy, I did bad things. I encountered this, not only in myself, but with people every week, some form of this, right? That at the Shorish, people really, really want light and they don't feel worthy. They don't believe the light, not only that they could have access to the light, but that the light is already in them. Okay, so Rav Kook says, Yisrael hem yisod ha'emunah be'olam. Am Yisrael is the very foundation of emunah, up for and of the whole world. Emunat Hashem bechol hoda mitgaberet veholechet bekneset Yisrael. Right, it says this foundational light in all of its glory and all of its strength is played out in and through Am Yisrael. ועל כן היא, רק היא, הייתה הווה ותהיה מאירה באור הטוב של האמונה העליונה בעולם. In other words, let's take it back to the nursing, right? He says, our tafkid in the world is to heal the world by repeatedly showing the world that same principle that we talked about with the nursing baby, right? Hashem is good. Hashem loves you. Hashem wants your best, highest good. Hashem, right, is the underlying force of goodness for all creatures. Hashem loves and cares for all creatures and all of creation in an intimate, personal way, not in a removed way, right? That's the whole mission of Am Yisrael. To live in not talk to people about it, but live in such a way where our lives are a testimony to that. That's a pretty tall order, right? But to live in a way where we call it attraction rather than promotion, to live in such a way that we shine out Hashem's, but we shine out Emunah, meaning that people look at us and they get strengthened that Hashem is kind, Hashem is good. There's underlying goodness in the world. Hashem really wants the best and good for each creature. היא הנה האומה היחידה השומרת את טהרת האמונה וחסנה ישראל עזין שבה umot, right? He says, this is really our mission. And he says, now we're on the bottom, right? The little text on the bottom. Yisrael hem yisod emunah ba'olam, mikol ha'olam, from all of the world, rak Yisrael mitgaleh ha'emunah hashlema b'Hashem, right? Our mission is to reveal in the fullest way right? This belief in there's one force, one creator, and that force is good and is personal and has our deep, most and best interests at heart. ולכן רק ישראל מאיר ויאיר בעולם באור הטוב של האמונה. And that it's our unique mission to illuminate, to be illuminated, and to continue illuminating the world with this light of the goodness of Emunah. There's a plan, there's a process. It's building something of the utmost good. It includes everybody and every creature and every part of creation. It looks different than it might look on the outside right now. It's a force that is loving, that is caring. Everything that we go through in childhood is meant to build our mochin, right? So that we can draw on those experiences. And obviously when they're healthy, it's easier. And when they're not healthy, it's also good because we learn what it looks like when it's not bitikun, right? So, right, we're meant to be like Moshe Rabbeinu, to nurse the world in this, like someone who had a really good nursing experience is like, life is good, right? Shefa is easy. It comes when you ask for it. You don't have to deserve it or work hard. Like, right, as we grow, we want to partner more so we contribute to the relationship. That's called Isarusa Dilatata. Even a baby learns Isarusa Dilatata by sucking. And that's for the baby's good, because too much milk would choke Chas v'shalom, the baby. So we even learn from a young age, right, that we have to initiate contact with Hashem and pull in the amount that we're ready to contain. So lovely, you know? So he says, "Ukashem shechisaron emunah b'yisod hatov gorem lemorech halev," and just like this alak and this foundational principle of emunah, of in the goodness of Hashem, in the goodness of life, and again he keeps saying again, in the goodness of yourself. He says it doesn't work if we only activate it this way. It has to be activated this way, right? Has to is a strong word, but you know, is healing. כך לעומת זה, אמונתם של ישראל מעוררת בהם חוסן ועוז. Okay, we're in Vav. לגאול צריכים גם בקטנות האמונה של עצמו. He says, אדם צריך לגאור בעצמו לא רק על מיעוט אמונתו בהשם, או פגמיו האחרים, אלא גם על מיעוט אמונתו בעצמו, על חוסר היכרותו את הסגולה הנשמתית שלו, כדי לשוב אל הגודל הראוי. He says, sometimes people meditate on, oh, I don't have emunah in Hashem. But he says, let's also meditate on if I'm lacking emunah in myself. He says, meditate on that I have this huge neshama placed inside of me. It's in me. It's already in there. It's there. Yeah. And he's inviting us in and he's saying, right, it's already in there. And if I don't believe that and I can't access that, then that becomes a point for my spiritual avodah, maybe for my meditating, you know. Every time I do meditations, with people to meet the light that's inside of them, most of the time people start crying because we don't really believe that. And even if we believe it intellectually, to have the experience and touch that inside of ourselves, it changes everything. Changes everything. Okay, so maybe we'll just do a little tiny bit more of Kook, and then we'll switch because it's so deep. I feel like it's not the kind of, I don't know, for me if she ought to do like a ton. We're in Zion. Kama tova mon'im beyadayim mipnei shiflut hada'at shebe'anashim asher ruach Hashem ra'ui lidfok belevavam. He says, "Oi, we miss out on so much good through our own hands, right? In other words, he's saying through our own belief systems, because we think so lowly of ourselves, right? When in truth, we are the people, by we, and he's saying everybody, right? That the Ruach Elohim is meant to be pulsating through our hearts, right? Like every second, with every new breath and every pulsation, Hashem loves me, Hashem loves me, Hashem wants my good, Hashem believes in me, I am good already, I have so much good in me, I have so much good to share, I am good, right? I am good. And here Hashem is pulsating through me life, right? And he says, when we diminish ourselves, we also diminish access to this pulsating light that's, right, wanting connection with us and moving in us and through us. And it's become so hard for us. We start to hold in our smallness. And it's so hard for us to believe in ourselves and in the greatness of our souls. This is a message that Rav Kook shared a lot. Lo hasviva v'lo hama'asim b'fratiut hem hayasadot she'alehem ha'osher nishmati banui ba'otzra ha'pnimi. He says, it's not your environment. It's not because other people mirror to you that you're good, right? Or how much even you help other people. It's not all the details of all the mitzvahs that you do. And he's saying, go deeper. He said, that's not the foundation of the true joy of the soul, of the treasure of the house on the inside, right? He says, it's not dependent on what you look like in the community, what people think about you, what they say, what they don't say, or even all the little details in your avodah, the Torah that you learn, the tefillah, the mitzvahs. He says, go deeper. Under that is the foundation of this, the greatness of your neshama. Ki'im godel hanefesh, greatness of your own soul. Hanefesh ha-kedusha ve'hatara pnimit ometz haratzon ve'oz ha'machshava hasviva ve'amaasim nichna'im mehem mipnei ha'otzma ha'ruchanit kshehi mit'omemet. He says, all this outer stuff, it shrinks in comparison to the mighty force of light and life that pulsates within us. All this light on the inside. So we're on the bottom, the little tiny word Zion. Kama tova moni biyadayim. Yeshnam anashim sheroim lekach sheruach Hashem yachdor lelibchem lelevavam. Ach hem be'atzmam monim et hatov hazeh. He says there's some people that, right, are worthy, that just they would feel this great light in Hashem's presence, right, moving and pulsating through them. But we ourselves are the ones that resist this good. We block it. We ourselves block it. Because it's so hard for us to believe in ourselves and in the greatness of our own soul. Lo hasviva v'lo hamahasim bepratiut. He says it's not the outer things, right? And it's not even the details of our mitzvahs. אנשים אלה חושבים שאינם ראויים לזכות לרוח השם בגלל שאין הסביבה של תנאי חייהם טהורה ומתאימה לכך. He says, why do we push this light away? Because of whatever choices that we made or things that we did or we're not doing or we should be doing, right? And we set up this resistance inside that therefore I don't deserve the light or to feel the light or know the light. I can't possibly be a high soul or a big soul or a deep soul. And he says we focus on all the outer, right? Either the outer reflections or the things that we know that we do or don't do. And we use that to judge, but that's not a scale that has nothing to do with our innate neshama, nothing. או מפני שאינם שלמים ומדקדקים מספיק במעשיהם. He says, if we know that we're falling short in our actions, ואולם האושר שבאוצר הנשמה הפנימי איננו מיוסד על שלמות המעשים, אלא על גודל הנפש. He says, we have to learn to rewire. One has nothing to do with the other. You don't love your child because they make their bed and they brush their teeth. They need to learn how to make their bed and brush their teeth. But that's not their goodness. That's not their worth. That's not their greatness. Their greatness is their greatness. And then there's a tahalich of, right, they're building vessels and how to work with their light and work with their greatness and work with this beautiful light and life force, right? But he says we wouldn't do that to a child, right? You both smiled, but we do it to ourselves all the time, right? I didn't make my bed well. I didn't brush my teeth well. I'm not deserving of this Oh Eloki, right? Smanish so deep. Okay, we'll just finish this little piece and then we'll mark the plate. Okay. Mamish Gavaldik, right? Like from Kook. From Kook. Okay. הסביבה והמעשים נכנעים הם מפני העוצמה הרוחנית. Right? So he says our environment, our feedback, things that happen in our life, what we're doing and not doing, it blocks the force of our inner light, right? The force of our inner light. סדר הדברים הוא הפוך ממה שנדמה לאנשים אלה. He says, if we only understood, it's so backwards. It's so backwards. לא שרק כשהסביבה ומעשים יהיו שלמים ונקיים. It's mamish not true that only when everything's all tick-tock and every I is dotted and every T is crossed and we're perfect and we're clean in our midot and in our mitzvahs and our Torah learning and our, right, everything, as Ruach Hashem, then maybe we'll be worthy, right, of having a connection to Hashem and to this inner light. It's mamish the opposite. When you allow this, when you awaken and arouse this light that's already inside of us, right? When we taste our own light and we taste Hashem's light, we taste our neshama, all the other stuff falls away. Because what we really want is goodness, right? And when we taste the goodness, we don't need all the other stuyot. I remember once going to the Rav, Zecher Tzadik Libracha, after a particularly fallen morning. And I walked in and the Rav looked at me and he said, מתי תפסיקי את השטויות? I just started laughing because I was like, how does he see this on me, you know? Like, and it was like a particularly fallen day. And he just like, he was like, you know how he was like, I was like, oh my gosh. And that I was like, right, not you're bad and you're blah, 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 but like, this is not my team for you, of you, you know? על כן עוסקים הם הצדיקים הגדולים בעיקר הדבר בגודל הפנימי. So that's why the true tzaddikim know the secret is don't mitasek with the fallen parts of the person, mitasek with their greatness, mitasek with their light, right? So keep working with their greatness, their light, their holiness, the greatness and beauty of their neshama. Kamuvan, of course, medakdakim hem b'ma'asim u'mishtadlim b'taharat hasviva. Of course, tzaddikim are careful with their mitzvahs and their ma'asim and their midot and their reactions. And of course, they're involved with taharat hasviva. Aval kol ze ba mitoch hagorem hapnimi shel ha'ora ha'elyona. But where is it being generated from? Not from shame and unworthiness, the opposite. I am housing Nefesh Eloki inside of me, and I want to make a nice home for her. I'm housing, right, Shrina in me, so not matim for me to bring her to these places, right? But always from the Godel. It's so gorgeous. Finney's cat. Like, I feel like 9 billion miles away from it, but just to learn it is like, right? It's such a good clue for, like, I wish it would have been more like this as a mother, you know? It's like the Hadgasha is always on the positive and the good and the light and the greatness, you know, I just got what he's saying. I just got what he's saying. It's all one thing, what he's saying. He's saying emunah is the belief in the underlying goodness of anything, of anybody. Right? Of the world, of ourselves, of each other, of Hashem's intentions. That's really what emunah is. It's the underlying belief that the goodness is already there, and the process is to remove whatever is covering that or blocking that. That's what he's saying. Start with it's already perfection in the inside. And then we remove the stuff, right? Like umanut, like, you know, carving to see the David in the marble, right? And then to remove what's not David. Wow. That just changes everything. That changes everything. Now we go back to what he said, and he says, so the shlichus of Am Yisrael, because when we say it's a munah, loses the right, believe in God. Okay, maybe, you know, our shlichus is to help the world see the true underlying goodness and perfection of everything that's already there. And there's coverings, there's klipa. This is what Avraham Avinu is being activated in this week. This is the activation this week. Okay. Wow. Where am I? I'm in the Daf Kaf Bet, second paragraph. Starts Al Ken Oskim, but we're at Aval Kol Zeh, third line down. אבל כל זה בא מתוך הגורם הפנימי של האורה העליונה, הזורמת בנשמה בכל הוד סגולתה. This is all of this, right? All the mitzvahs and the Torah learning and the praying and the fixing of the midot. And he says, right, all of that is getting energy and strength from being connected to and knowing we're connected to and we're of this great inner light that is flowing through hazolemet, that's flowing through b'neshama b'chol hod sgulata, that is flowing through our neshama in all of her glory and preciousness. Davka mitoch hatzinor hayoter gadol v'shotef, This is dafka, right? From this wide, channel. And this purified big wide channel, ולא ישפילו את עצמם להיות דבוקים תמיד בתוך הקטנוס של הדקדוקים הפרטיים שאין להם סוף. This is so rough, Kook. המלאים את הרוח העולה למעלה למעלה. Right? He says, right, we can miss the whole time of the light when we're like, we're very focused on getting all the details right and perfect, and believe that we can't have connection to Hashem and the light and the inner light until we get all those details right and perfect, right? He says it goes, he's like, awake, and it's the opposite. The more you taste the big, wide picture of the light, right, the more those things are in flow. And right, the point of all those little dikdukim is the light and is the connection. So he's saying, like, not, well, we don't need halacha, right? But halacha itself flows and comes from a place of trust in the underlying goodness of ourselves and our bechira and our ratzonot and our choices, right? And it's so different. We navigate it so differently. ובכלל, לא העולם המוחשי בדיוקי ועליו תופס המקום היותר גדול בנשמת חיים הנצחית. He says, and as a general principle, this physical world with all of its details, he's saying even halachic details, by the way, right? He's saying here, it's not תופס המקום היותר גדול בנשמת חיים הנצחית. He says that's not there's ikar and there's tafel, right? And he's saying to us, don't make the ikar the perfection of, right, all the details to the point that the light gets squeezed out. המופיע באור גדולה בנשמות העליונות, כי אם ההוד הנשגב של תפארת חי העולמים. He says, put the focus on, right, the glory of the elevation of the beautiful life of all lives, right, giver of all life. שבתוכו הכל כלול, that in Hashem is included everything. כל הטוב הרעיוני המוסרי והמעשי. Right? Says the point is we want to be connected to Tov. And he says, and in Hashem is included any kind of Tov you can imagine. Ideal Tov, right? Moral goodness and action, right? It revealed actual good, right? התפשטות השלמות על המעשים כולם, מאליה היא באה בעת אשר הרצון הגדול לטוב האלוקי ברוב טהרו פועל בכל תקפו. The flow, right, the outward flow, the complete flow of all masim, of all action, I guess. Me'aleha hi ba is flowing out from here, it's saying from the source of all good, from Hashem. Okay, he's saying something really, really deep here. And again, he's saying, don't cut off the ratzon for goodness and that's in yourself and in Hashem from all the I can't get it right. I didn't write. This wasn't good. That wasn't good. I'm not there yet. I'll never, I can't have a connection to God until I get this right and do this good and do tshuva about this and fix that. And he's like the opposite. Turn it on, plug in, feel all the light, and then all that other stuff finds its proper place. I'll just finish the paragraph. ומכל מקום פונים הם הצדיקים Lifamim merov godlam, and he says, and sometimes the tzaddikim, the big elevated holy masters, sometimes because of their greatness, mistaklim al kol ma'asehem b'pratei pratiut. He says, yeah, sometimes they go into really exact details about their mitzvot and ma'asiot. אחרי שכבר שבעו זיו אדנים מעונג העליון, והרוח מלא כוח התעודד והתאמץ, החשק של הטוב והטוהר מלא אור חיים, חי בלב פנימה, בא חשבון הנפש בגדולה ובתפארת, לפרטים ופרטי פרטים. He says, right, tzaddikim sometimes, but they do it in this order, right? They get so plugged into the underlying goodness, the underlying desire for Hashem to give us good and for us to not only receive good, but also give Nachat Ruach to Hashem and good. And they're so filled with that it's like when you love someone and you're like, can I make you a tea? And you're like, do you like honey? Do you like chamomile? Do you want the brown mug? Do you want, right? You go into the pratei pratiut to deepen the intimacy, right? But the point is the flow and the connection. And he says, so sometimes tzaddikim will get into all the pratim, but not from fear and trying to earn connection and get it right so that they can deserve, right? No, from the opposite. And this, so yummy. בא גם הדכדוך הנפשי והגופני כזרם שוטף ורעם נורא, פחד וגודל, תקווה וביטחון ושאיפות תיקון לכל פגם. He says when they're so plugged in and they're so connecting to the underlying light and the underlying goodness, yeah, then it can manifest in details, both in the body and in the soul, right? As a light, as a flow of energy and light that cleanses, purifies, and thunder, greatly, and awe and greatness, hope and trust, and this. But he's giving here the picture of the deepest yearning and longing for the fixing of everything, right? It says that's not the same as, right? Tshuva Elyona hakolelet kol hatshuvot kulan. Okay, so we'll end this Rav Kook part here. We'll do questions and whatever, but right. So he's saying, right? Hard to he gives so much light. I sometimes just feel like I'm like, So let's just bring it into a vessel for a minute, and you have to go, and I don't know what you're doing, you have to go. So questions, comments, feedback, what does that mean to you? What did it speak to you? Did it speak to you?
You articulated it, you gave it ever so clearly. It just speaks for itself.
Yes. So, but but in your actual life, right? Like he's like, I told you guys this before, but that I did a Tisha B'Av class, maybe like 8, 7, I don't know how many years, when Danny Brock still lived here. It was in the Bronx. And I started the class with like a lot of women, I don't know, 50, 60 women. It was the whole Bat Midrash. And I started the class by saying, how many people here feel worthy of Hashem's love? And one woman raised her hand, and another woman was like, I always say 1.5, because she wasn't sure. And like woman looked around, and I was like, this is really big. Right? Because it's hard to let something in that we don't believe we deserve or we're worthy of, or right. So Rav Kook is like, There's nothing you could ever do to deserve this light or earn this light. It's a gift. It's already there. It's already in us. And the opposite, like the more we believe that it's there and know that it's there, it can actually elevate us out of the things that are keeping us stuck. But I'm really curious to know where it lands practically. Like, what the
It's
kids.
interesting to say that, it just sounds so practical. It's
Yeah.
essentially practical. Ready to go home. My son for lunch in a different place.
Yeah, fair. Good. That's what we're going for. Wow.
And I love the nursing mission. That's just.
For me, the chidush really, really was to translate Amuna in a different way. Like that was such a chidush for me. I've always struggled, like, what exactly does Amuna mean, you know? And like, I didn't feel like I got today. Amuna is the underlying belief of the goodness, the essential perfection and goodness of anything and everything.
It's really helping me because I'm struggling in the last days of realizing, hey, I can stop going to the place of as if it's supporting or being with others by the brokenness of it all. Like, yeah, right, yes, we're broken. But this was.
Although I would say,
Hashem.
personally, that was so healing for me. Like sometimes we're holding so much of the brokenness. I found that really healing to not hold it alone. And maybe, yes, come back to, okay, we're in a talich, but it's like if I was in labor, well, she was with me when I gave birth to Hanaleh. Right? It's like that balance of like your pain is real, the suffering is real, and we need that reflected to us, and we can't stay here. We have to, right? And you really did literally do that. Like I literally was in labor for hours and I thought I had all this heat kadmut. I'm like, for sure, I like opened 3-4 more centimeters. And the midwife came in and I had not progressed at all from when we got there. And I don't think I ever remember feeling such a yesh in my life. Like in that moment, I was just like, I literally cannot do one more contraction. Because it was like, okay, working, but it's doing something. We're getting somewhere, you know? And then it was like all of that work and it didn't do anything. And it was like, oh my gosh. And you're like, okay. And I was, remember I kept saying, how much longer? And you're like, let's just do this next contraction. And like, I'm a doula. I know that, you know, but after that, I was just like, eh, like, so I think there's something really healthy about both, you know, holding the both. But yeah.
In holding the brokenness from a place like the Kook is saying, holding the brokenness from the underlying, with the underlying Hashem's good and Hashem loves me, Hashem loves you, holding that place, then the brokenness is clear that it's not getting. The brokenness is clear, more clearly can process through.
Yeah, I understand.
So I think it's like, it's interesting how I'll do it here. And sometimes other people, when we feel broken, when we're in labor, other people can see the wholeness in each other. Like we can feel broken and other people sometimes to remind us and reflect in life, so to speak, to remind us that we're whole, because when you're not going through the contractions, you can see the wholeness. When somebody's in their trigger, if you recognize my spouse, my daughter, my friend is triggered, then if I'm holding their wholeness and I can see their wholeness, then I can be with them in their brokenness and understand them.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna end. There's someone on Zoom, so we're gonna end the recording. I think we're coming right back on. Maybe in like 2 minutes, or maybe I'll just come back and we'll wait and see what we're doing. So I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you everybody for joining us.